G'day everyone, my name's Justin Tippett. Welcome to the CX Central podcast. Today's special guest is Maksim Lukascuk, and I hope I pronounced that right, Maksim. I practiced. And Maksim is the Sales Engineering Manager for Avaya of the Nordics and Baltics region. So first of all, welcome Maksim. Thanks for joining us.
Hi Justin, great to be here with you.
Really awesome to have you on the show. We've spoken once before and had a wonderful chat. So this time other people can listen to this chat. Now, before we get into a whole bunch of stuff that I want to talk to you about, particularly around, I guess, given your background, technology and CX, let's just talk about Nordics and Baltics, because I know for a lot of our listeners, they're probably going, I have no idea what countries are in that region. Can you just explain it to our listeners for us?
Exactly. A lot of people don't even know where it is, but many people know us because of skiing champions coming from Norway and cycling. That's how people know at least the countries typically. But where it is, it's up north. Most of us, most of the countries. There are many countries in the Nordics, so it's Scandinavian countries: Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Iceland, and also. Greenland, which is part of Denmark. Hope my colleagues from Denmark don't kill me for saying something wrong, or the guys from Greenland. And then the Baltic countries, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, all around the Baltic Sea. So that's a very diverse region, I can tell you. It's everything different. You may see from the outside that it's all the same. We're all alike. Not at all. Everything is different in every country. Across the border, it's a totally different world.
Well, I'm looking forward to unpacking that, mate, because that's going to give us some great insight, because that's why you are where you are, because there is that diversity. There are differences between how all countries, but not only manage their technology, but what the consumer preferences are, CX preferences, etc. So that's why you're in the hot seat, mate, earning those big bucks. And I'm looking forward to unpacking that with you. I loved one of your quotes actually in your LinkedIn profile. It says, "You speak tech and exec." I think that's a great line, right? Because often, having been on both sides of the fence, some of those technical conversations lose me. And of course, a lot of times, when executives, they don't get the tech either. So I'm really looking forward to unpacking some of that in this conversation and explaining things, whether it's someone who's new to call centers and it's first time they're listening and saying they want to get their head around what the technology is, or if we've got some executives. I think either audience is going to get something out of your conversation. So having said that, I'm going to throw a question at you, and I suppose I'm going to start off very, very broad, because things seem to be moving. We say this all the time in call center world, don't we? Things are moving at such a rapid pace, but we should be used to it by now, because it's been doing that since I've been in the industry. But where do you see technology at the moment?
Well, first and foremost, where it is hard to say, because it's moving. It's all the time on the move, and you're correct. And, it's all about automation, it seems, these days. So everyone wants automated solutions in one way or another, whether it's text, whether it's voice now coming of age. Hopefully video comes after a while as well, automated, and talking heads and everything. People are talking about that already here.
Sure.
And
is anyone doing it yet, Maksim, in the sort of your region? Is anyone that actually going ahead with video?
Well, yeah, there are some attempts, and that started about 10 years ago, I would say. Video was a buzz, and we had some clients deploying it, having a whole one agent serving, the video channel, because they wanted to be out there. But really, the new changes in legislation, for example, that allow you to identify a person via video, so by showing an ID card, and that's enough, and you record the video, and so you have a person. Banks, they're crazy about it.
Yep.
They want to take new customers, steal customers from other banks as well, and bank and finance sector is very competitive. So they're really looking at it at the moment and deploy that.
Okay, fantastic. Sorry, I took you away from automation, because I know you're saying that is really hot at the moment, right?
Exactly. Well, automation is still there, because you are enhancing that person-to-person live communication with analytics tools that analyze everything you say, right? So they give your contact center employees support in what they should talk about. So you can analyze everything that happens in the contact center, analyze what your customers are asking for, what's their mood, where they want to go, and you can do that in text, voice, and video as well.
Yep. So the automation that you're speaking about there is obviously, I guess, from the contact center manager side or the marketing side, where they can get insights about conversations. It's text analytics or speech analytics, etc. And but what about from the customer side, like as in chatbots and that sort of stuff? Are you seeing that still going at a rapid pace, or is it people sort of going, oh, you know what, it's not as great as we thought, or is everyone quite bullish on it still?
Well, actually both. So there was a great boom of chatbots a few years ago. So it started and it still grows. Mm-hmm. A lot of our customers have automated a great deal of simpler interactions. So chatbots, they are serving the majority of those text-based transactions these days, both externally and internally. So the chatbots are assisting actually internal employees, but the technologies that provide these capabilities, or technologies that are sophisticated enough, they aren't available for smaller companies. So it's mostly bigger companies that have budgets to invest into these technologies that enjoy really powerful solutions.
Yeah,
that's a problem.
I've got to ask, Maksim, because my exposure to chatbots here in Australia, sort of in the Asia Pacific region, more so in Australia, has been pretty ordinary. I'm yet to actually have a good experience on a chatbot. Now, I'll preface that by saying we're often a little bit behind here in Australia from the rest of the world. Do you see some really good examples? Because we're going to talk about your CX exposure later on, because I think it's great that you can see things through two lenses. Are you seeing some good examples of chatbots actually working really well and efficient overseas?
Well, again, for simpler transactions, they are pretty mature these days, and we see great success, especially as mentioned with larger companies who have time and money to invest into making them really work, because that's a lot of work. You take a chatbot, it's a stupid machine, can give you a few answers maybe. That's it, and they aren't necessarily the right answers, right? Or in the right format that the person is looking for. People are complex beings, unfortunately, so it's not as easy to tailor to them. But larger companies, they learn continuously, and we see that really a great deal of simpler interactions are fully automated these days, and customers also want that. They have got used to that, so they really expect now companies to provide these capabilities to them.
Yep. Where's that line that and I agree with you. I think a lot of people think they can just go and buy a chatbot, implement it, and job done. Everything's going to be simple, and I've shaved all my costs. The reality is far from that. Obviously, with Avaya, you deal typically with very large companies, but I know you've got products for smaller companies. Is there a sort of a line where you say, you know what, look, less than 50 seat call centers or 500 seat calls, or whatever it might be, the investment to get the benefits out of it isn't there? And I'm sure someone's probably done the ROI on these sorts of things. But given your experience, I thought I'd throw that question to you.
Well, they are trying, I can tell you. Those contact centers are really trying hard, but by and large, I see that that it's still the technology still isn't there. So typically, you would solve some simple FAQ, but not really something that solves customers' issues or performs transactions or gives advice. So yeah, people are trying this, but smaller companies still struggle with efficient chatbot implementation in here. Or I hear the same thing in many parts of the world.
Yeah. So it's more just handling your sort of basic triage stuff, what are your hours, what's my balance, that sort of stuff. But once it gets beyond sort of anything more complex than that, flick it to a live agent kind of approach.
Exactly, yes. There's still a great value to collect from simple chatbots that simply collect the data and then deliver it to the agent and save time to the agent. But it needs to be implemented right? So it's not just about the technology, it's about processes and people, as always.
Yep.
Right? A lot of tech people think, oh, you put a technology and it's all sort of magically solves all your issues, but that's not the case.
Yep.
I can tell you one of the examples where I was chatting with an agent, with a chatbot first. So I have supplied all the information about my issue, and then it went to the agent, and then the agent started to ask the same questions that the chatbot has already asked. And, so they solved my issue in the end, and I asked, okay, so have you seen my answers that I gave to the chatbot? He said, yes, I did, but I didn't have time to read them.
That's probably not the last time we're going to hear an example like that either, I don't think, is it? So now, before we sort of dragged you down that path on chatbots, apologies, because you also mentioned sort of the analytics stuff and the speech analytics, and I do think it's just a treasure trove of information for contact centers, but I really think a lot of contact centers, particularly maybe some of the smaller ones, just aren't aware of sort of what some of the things that they can get or learn from speech analytics. Can you spend a couple of minutes, I guess, telling us, for those that would be new to speech or text analytics, etc., just what it means for someone running a call center?
Well, probably an example could be best here. We have a customer, a regular contact center, omni-channel, serving customers. Majority of their contacts are still in voice. They are trying to classify every call and then make decisions based on that, how to optimize their performance, how to feed the information back into their organization. But really, they didn't, again, people, right? They are clicking wrong classification codes. Yep. You cannot build a billion of those codes because every conversation have a different flavor. Sort of the main topic is one, but there are a lot of side things that a customer might mention. So how do you classify those? How do you pull information out there? Either you use an agent, spending a lot of time on making notes, or you use some technology that understands what the conversation is all about. Right. So what they are doing, they are implementing speech analytics at the moment, and we'll do the same thing for text in the future. And their goal is really to feed the information back into the organization for why customers are calling, where the problems are, where the processes and products need to improve, and then solve a lot of issues, both locally for the contact center, but also for the organization as a whole, right? And making customers happier, not just through those interactions, but in generally from experience of that company.
Yeah, and
so that's a good example.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I was going to ask: is it? I sort of know the answer in some respects. So I'm not trying to lead you though. I know now that it used to be quite cost prohibitive when you looked at these sorts of technology, and I think now it's never been easier to implement. And I should have prefaced this by saying Avaya is not a sponsor of CX Central. I'm talking to Maksim because he's a very smart guy and we want to learn from him. So that's why I'm pumping him for all these answers, guys. Is it? I know with you guys, is it simply now just a bit of a tick box in some respects for your platform? And I'm oversimplifying it, but it's not a multi-million-dollar investment like it used to be anymore, is it?
Well, most of the technologies become much more affordable these days, and analytics is one of those. And I think one of the key enablers here is cloud. Right? So, in the past, you would need to invest a lot into infrastructure, into setup, configuration. These days it's much easier. So you get a cloud service, everything is there ready for you to take. Some integration work still needs to happen, but it's much easier, much more affordable, and time to results is also shorter. So a lot of benefits that are coming from cloud.
Yeah. So to practice the model around talking tech and exec, for people that hear cloud all the time, and apologies to those who already know what cloud is, but there's a lot of people here I think who hear the term cloud, and we know that everything's moving to the cloud. But what exactly is the cloud? How do you explain it when you're going into a business and said, hey, we've got this cloud solution for you, and they sort of all look at you blankly? How do you use some words to explain it all to them?
Yeah, well, I think the best explanation to cloud is that cloud is someone else's computer. There's a meme somewhere on LinkedIn about that, and That's probably the best definition, right? So someone else takes care for your technology, whether it's in a private cloud fashion where it's the same setup as you would have in your own data center, but it's in someone else's, or it's public cloud, so-called public cloud, where the technology is shared between multiple customers, but they are sort of isolated. Everyone has its own piece of the pie. So that's basically what cloud is, and it's great. You can still have control as a larger company if you are going for a private cloud. So everything is completely secure. There's a whole bunch of servers that are only serving you, providing service to your company. So no one else has access to it. You can rely on this technology as if it were your own.
Your own, yeah.
Public cloud is good for smaller ones, right? Typically very easy, typically less expensive.
Yeah, so I think in Australia, a lot of the smaller centres are using public cloud, but as you said, a lot of the larger, particularly the financial institutions, the banks, etc., would all have their own private cloud for obvious reasons. So, absolutely, and obviously it's a cost. I mean, there's a whole bunch of benefits, isn't there? You don't need a whole IT team to manage things. You don't need space for servers and God knows how much computer equipment. It's almost a bit of a no-brainer. Are you still doing some of the so-called old-fashioned installations, or is pretty much everything now just going the way of the cloud?
Yeah, well, what I can say is that probably most of our customers dream about some sort of cloud. Not all of them are ready for that because there are some financial limitations and constraints for them to go to cloud because they had huge investments into their own equipment. So some of them are growing naturally, right? So adding more and more equipment into their own data centers. Some of them are migrating to cloud pretty aggressively. Some of the companies, there's a sort of a disenchantment of with the public cloud, so they are choosing private options. Yeah, but the majority are moving into the cloud. That's no doubt in that. But still, some of the customers still want to have the control, the confidence of the on-prem equipment. But majority of commercial customers, they go cloud. Some of the public sector customers, especially in healthcare, they want to have their own data centers and closed environments again. Because of the regulations and security, and in Europe we have GDPR, right, which is pretty strict, and in some countries we have very strict regulations about patient data, for example, that cannot leave the country. So that puts some other limitations, and most public and even private cloud setups, they are somewhere else outside of the country. So that also brings some limitations to what our customers can do. But everyone wants to get rid of that responsibility, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. More broadly, I'd love to get your insights into contact centers as a whole, because I've been doing this for about 30 years, and I reckon for about 29 of those years, I reckon I've been hearing the death of contact centers, that we don't need them anymore. And there was a famous CEO out here of Telstra, which is our big telecommunications company out here, and he came out about 7 years ago and said that call centers will be gone in 5 years. So I'm pleased to say that he was wrong, and I've still got a job and we still have an industry. But what's your thoughts on sort of contact centers? Are they here to stay? Are they growing more in stature in your sort of region of the world, or are you seeing a decline?
Well, my dream is that contact centers disappear, but not in a way that we stop serving customers through some human interaction, but more that everyone in the company becomes a contact center, part of the contact center, part of the customer journey, right? And feels that and takes the responsibility for that. At that point in time, everyone wins, both customers and enterprises. So, and I see that the technology is moving in there, right? We're talking about engaging people in the back office or providing them right tools or the same tools that the front office people have, right? In order to connect the dots on the customer journey and make sure that customers receive the same service throughout every touch point on their way. So that's probably what is happening, and we see that yeah, there's a great deal of automation, and that's probably why your colleague said that the contact centers would disappear, but humans will still be there. We need human touch, and that's no doubt in there. What we need to do is obviously to automate and eliminate all the bottlenecks towards that human touch. I can give you probably an example for why a contact center or human touch wouldn't disappear.
Please.
So I've been purchasing hosting services for my website that I had for a while, photography one, by the way.
Yep.
And there, they had an automated process. Everyone has an automated process to order hosting services. But these guys, they made me call them. When I was at the end of my transaction ordering the service, they made me call them. And I was so frustrated. But when I did call them, I did talk to really proficient salespeople there. And they told me, you have a personal manager, because you're buying one of the cheapest options, for hosting. And then they have sold me 3 years of service instead of 1. And I was happy about that. And then they transferred me to a tech support department to fix all my potential issues. And this transfer was absolutely seamless, because the tech guy knew who I was, knew all the options I just ordered, and was so helpful. It was fantastic, and that's what human touch means, right?
Yeah. It raises so many things on that conversation, Maksim, because I know you've just done your CCXP. So for those that don't know what that is, it's a certified customer experience professional. And I know you did the course through our CX Skills business, and did the Introduction to CX Management course with Daniel Lord, who I speak to a lot. And I know you know Daniel well, having done his course. So I can tell that CX is coming through, but I'm interested in your thoughts, because I think what's happening in the world, it seems to me now, and with Amazon model, I think Bethos was famous for saying the best service is no service. And I find it's really interesting now that in that example that you gave me with your internet service provider, that there was still a problem. You still had to contact someone, and then they've effectively upsold you to buy and pay for some better service. And you'd think if they got it right in the first place, you never would have had to call. And so I sort of think as long as that mentality is around, there's always going to be contact centers, because people are always going to do things that companies don't want them to do. But do you have a view on that example? Because as I said, you've got the CX focus on now, and you've also got the tech, and you've mentioned removing bottlenecks several times. So I know it's a big thing for you. How do you see all this panning out?
Well, obviously, as I mentioned, technology is not everything, right? It's about people, processes, everyone working together. That's when you get great results. And you've had a few other folks talking about marketing, right? Talking about frontline people, management. So everything has to be in line, and then you mentioned that you talk to executives who don't necessarily understand technology, right? And it's important to make them understand. And how do you make them understand? So you have to go there and talk their language. And their language, they are people managers, right? They talk people. That's how you get through them, get the message about how you align technology. And that's where CX training that provided by you and Daniel came very handy, because you sort of start to understand the big picture. Because every tech guy like myself, starts with the idea that you solve everything with technology, and then you learn, there are people that think differently.
Yeah, damn those people.
Training like the one provided by Daniel, shows really the connections.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the CX is such a broader space than just looking at, as you said, just tech and people. But I find often the executives that I've come across are very cost focused, and that sometimes gets lost in the people and the customer experience as well. How do you combat that sort of scenario, because you are dealing with some multi-million-dollar projects, in your role? So I guess cost is always going to be an underlying factor as well.
That's true, and that's an art, right? Of building an ROI story of customer experience. So obviously, you have to justify every investment these days, no doubt about that. However, the great problem on the market was always how do you connect the benefits of the customer experience, in particular, into some financial numbers. That's not many people and not many customers, even investing multiple millions, are savvy at that. Unfortunately, I can tell you. And that's where people like myself, like a bunch of Daniel's trainees come in and help management, put the numbers together and see how the new investments can benefit not only directly, like saving costs by reducing the number of agents, for example, but also how do they increase sales? How do they, there's a great deal of technology in there that helps you sell more, right?
Absolutely, yeah, you're right. I think I think for too long we've probably suffered as a bit of an industry of really just, we're very good at talking about things that just don't matter to a lot of people. It's a very fluffy kind of thing. Oh, we want to make our customers happy and everyone's, living in a wonderful world. But, the reality is executives do talk in numbers. And I think one of the things you learn by doing CX is actually trying to equate that back to a cost. And the reality is if you serve your customers better, it's typically more efficient and they'll stay with you longer and spend more. So all the research now really starts to demonstrate that. So I think we've all got to start using that language when we're talking about projects, and we'll all be in a much better spot, right?
That's exactly the case, right? And again, going through the training, the great thing was to find out how other people are doing it, right? So to learn some techniques of not only improving that customer experience, but also making sure that you do it in an efficient manner.
Yeah, absolutely. When you did with the CX course, is not to sell the course at all, but I'm interested in what were the biggest takeaways that you got from it? Because everyone has a different perspective of CX, right? And I think, when you do a course, a fairly comprehensive course, it's 2 days. What was your biggest takeaway?
Well, personally, for me, it was putting structure around all the knowledge that is out there. You can watch YouTube, you read articles on the internet, and you sort of know bits and pieces, but you don't have a understanding of the big picture. And the course really puts everything into their respective shelves, shows the connections between things, and you sort of have a map in your head, and you can navigate your job, your everyday, basically, with that roadmap in your head. So that was one of the greatest discoveries, at least for me, because obviously, and you discussed this with both Daniel and some other people you have interviewed, 16 hours for that particular course can't give you every bit you will ever need, but at the same time it puts everything into perspective and connects the dots. It was absolutely fantastic, and the test itself also makes you think about putting things together. That's great experience, actually. Yep. It was a little bit scary to start,
I'm sure,
but my first question was something I haven't heard about, and I thought, wow,
Not a great start.
If the whole test is like that, then what am I doing here? But it was a good experience in the end.
Yep. How did you go? I think one of the things that's the CCXP test is famous for is you get your score straight away. So when you hit submit right at the end, you know whether you passed or failed. How did you go when you pressed that button? You take a big breath and.
Yeah, I did. Absolutely. So it was a thrill for sure. It was a great relief then to see how you did. And the good thing is that they are giving you scores by every competency, right?
Right. Yep.
So in the end, you know where you did well and where you need to improve.
Yep.
And that's very helpful. And I felt that some competencies where I generally felt weaker even while studying, it shows, right?
Right.
So you really need to dig a little bit deeper to be better in those areas.
Yeah, awesome, great feedback. Now, what's next for Avaya and for you? Because as you said, the tech is moving all the time, right? Nothing stands still. So what's hot on the horizon?
Well, absolutely. Cloud is a big thing, and we are working day and night on delivering the messages to our existing customers and also to the new ones, to prospects in the region. What I've seen so far happening in our markets is that we are all small countries with very specific languages that aren't typically supported by big vendors like Variant, Google, and others. So we had a lot of startups here taking the niche, with automation.
Yep.
But what happens now is that big guys are coming in here because English is there, German is there. What else do you do? You go to smaller countries and you deliver those languages. And we see that it's much more efficient with big vendors because they have a lot of people, a lot of technology, and typically it's more economical for our customers. And we are partnering with the big companies. So that's where our focus is, right? Automation, bringing it to local markets and making it available for them. Not only in the big countries, but also in our markets.
I noticed a lot of the marketing for those watching on the video right now, just showing the website. You can see a lot of the marketing now is really all about the customer now. So it's moved away from the tech, hasn't it? And it's all very, very customer focused.
That's true, and in fact, the decision making has also shifted from purely IT that we dealt with for a very long time, right? So call centers were in the IT department typically. Right now, we see much more business involvement. They want to make decisions. They want to participate. They want to influence, and they are a lot of our bigger customers are changing their internal structures to be more agile. They are applying these agile principles, and those teams that work on different projects, they always include someone, a business representative, so that the customer, the business, the people are always in focus in all of the projects. Yep. That's for sure.
Yeah, wow. It's there you go. And in terms of you career-wise, how's it work at Avaya? Do you sort of look after the Nordic region and then you get promoted to a bigger region, or do you end up sort of running the whole show over there? Like, what are you aspiring to do?
We'll see. Well, I'm really happy to where I am at the moment. The team is fantastic, and it's throughout the whole of Avaya. I talk to a lot of people. It's really the spirit of camaraderie. Everyone helps each other. Everyone's friendly. So the climate is great. So I'm really happy where I am.
Yep, that's always.
Where do you move next?
It's always a good thing, mate. In Australia, we have what we call long service leave. So once you've been with the company 10 years, you normally get a bit of a bonus and a bit of holidays. I notice you've been with Avaya, what is about 14 years now. How's it work for you? Do you get a nice big fat bonus when you get 15 years or 20 years?
Well, I still need to work for my bonus. Yes, a little bit more. But the whole climate is a bonus. I could tell you that a person like myself, technologically savvy, well, or interested in technology, you are working always on the edge, right, of the technology. So you always learn something new. That's fantastic. But what I really like to do is meet people, talk to people, understand, interact, and that's probably what I would like to do more of in the future. And
I've got to say, Maksim, that's quite rare for a tech person, right?
Well, it's maybe some of them, yes, some of them are strange people, really strange, but it's a spectrum. There are people who are very, and I'm managing a small team, 5 people. All of them are engineers, but they are so different. Yep. Some of them are really outgoing and want to be out there and want to party and connect with everyone. And others just want no one to touch them and just leave them alone to work on their, baby project. And it's amazing. But they are all really, really good, both technologically, business-wise.
It certainly takes all types to be successful. How have you found the whole COVID experience over there with your team? Is it, you guys working in the office still? You're all working from home. Has it really shifted the way you've had to do things?
Well, we were always a distributed team, first of all. So we've been using collaborative technologies for a very long time. So the shift isn't that big for us. And we were working from home a lot. 2 days a week probably was at least a normal schedule. But of course, customers that you don't see physically anymore, that's where the problem is. So it really shifts how you interact with people, how you work with them. I can tell you that you need much more attention, in fact, because those physical meetings, they leave a bigger footprint, I could say.
Yeah.
A bigger impression, and now you have to work much harder to get to people's hearts, and that's probably the biggest difference for us.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's fine. The collaboration stuff seems to be all right when you've already got a relationship with someone. It's sort of like you're just tapping in a little bit. But when you're meeting people for the first time, it's and you're building a relationship, it is a bit harder over over video or Zoom or whatever it is that you're using. I completely agree with you. But it's also had lots of benefits because we can do things like this that we probably wouldn't have been able to do before and have video chats with people on the other side of the world. So I'm going to take the good with the bad, I think.
Exactly. So for us, Avaya is not just a contact center company. We are producing as well collaborative technologies, and obviously that had a positive result for us. So we could see customers acquiring much more of the both hardware for home working as well as software for video conferencing, chatting, homework in general. So it worked quite well for us business-wise, but of course we are there with people and trying to. Yeah, well, we understand it's not easy, but doing our best to help.
Absolutely. It's certainly changed the way we all do things, and I think that's going to be something that's going to continue on in the future. It's not going back to normal ever, I don't think. So we'll all just learn to roll with it. The course that you did with Daniel, if anyone is interested, you will find it on our CX Skills website. So it is the Customer Experience Management course. It's a 16-hour course. So it's done over four-hour workshops because we know everyone's busy. You can see a video of myself and Daniel, and there's lots of information there on the on CX Skills, and of course we run it about every 2 months or so. We run the course, so you'll see the next date whenever it is on the CX Skills website. Maksim, thanks so much for joining us today. I know, as I said, it's while it's great that we can easily jump on Zoom, time zones are still there, so it's a later night for me and it's an early morning for you. So I really appreciate you switching on the camera and coming up a little bit earlier for us before you have to start your day ahead.
It was a pleasure, Justin. Thanks. And it feels like we are really in neighboring houses, at least, or rooms maybe. And so it's daylight on your side, daylight on my side. Really, it feels like we are not that far apart.
It really does, and your English is absolutely fantastic. So far better than my any Nordic languages, I can assure you. So really a pleasure to catch up. I'm sure we'll do it again in the future. I'd love to check in with you sort of later in the year and see how things are travelling over your side of the world. So thank you once again. Thanks everyone for listening, and of course you'll be able to watch this if you're listening on the cxcentral.com.au website at any time. It'll be there under our podcast sections. Otherwise, if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify or all the usual spots, thank you. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode soon. Thanks again, Maksim. Bye for now.
Thank you, Justin.